Now shifting gears, our special series continues on the Arctic, on thin ice. World leaders talk about cutting greenhouse gases, but some oil and gas giants just aren't listening. Some are exploring the farthest reaches of the Earth to find more energy. Of course, there's also the impact to the environment. Callebs, who traveled to the most remote part of Alaska, joins us. Hi, Sean.
Phil, thanks very much. What you touched upon is exactly right. At the same time, the warning is going out to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. Some oil giants are going to the ends of the earth, literally, to find more and more natural resources. Now, we told you here last night that as much as 30% of the world's natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, remain buried above the Arctic Circle. Now, off the coast of Alaska, the U.S. federal government sold massive blocks for oil and gas exploration. Now, there could be untold riches under these leases. Two companies, Royal Dutch Shell and Statoil, a Norwegian company, had planned on drilling after purchasing these leases. In fact, Shell spent $7 billion and years preparing to drill in a region that is frozen solid 9 months out of the year. Well, it didn't go well for Shell. The company announced that it was abandoning its plans for now to close 2 months ago. And just 2 weeks ago, Statoil followed suit. Too costly, too risky, while the price of oil is so deflated. But Prudhoe Bay along Alaska's North Slope, for close to 40 years, thousands and thousands of oil and gas workers have been entrenched, feeding the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Now, in the golden days, some 2 million barrels of oil a day flowed through that pipeline. But that has changed. We went to the town of Dead Horse, Alaska to find out why legions would risk life and limb in one of the most brutal climates on Earth to make a living.
This northeastern section of Alaska is dotted with oil rigs, crisscrossed with ice-covered roads, and seemingly everywhere there is pipeline. Far above the Arctic Circle, near the town of Dead Horse, you can find the start of one of the longest pipelines in the world, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And over the years, thousands of workers pretty much came with the same question on their lips.
How was I going to stay warm? Growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, of course we had snow, but nothing like this. The cold was nothing like up here.
It doesn't help that virtually all heavy work must be done in the winter. There are no paved roads here. In this environment, people drive on ice-covered earth and the frozen Arctic Ocean. In the summer, these giant rigs are just too heavy to motor around on thawing earth.
That's called a baby gone.
A massive vehicle used to pump water onto ice, to make the ice thick enough for even the heaviest of vehicles.
On the ocean, it might only be a half-a-mile ice road, but it might be 25 feet thick. Because a drilling rig weighs in at 2 million pounds, has got to go over that ice.
At its height, the pipeline carried more than 2 million barrels of oil a day. Today, that number is down to 500,000 daily. But the oil industry expects to feed the pipeline for years and years to come, despite efforts by the U.S. and other nations to dramatically curb reliance on fossil fuels.
I think the reason why investment continues to occur here, exploration, research, regardless of the cost, is we have such mega potential here.
The Oil and Gas Association says there is as much as 50 billion barrels of oil left in Alaska's North Slope. That includes offshore deposits. If that's true, workers like truck supervisor Rusty Watson will continue to risk life and limb to extract energy from this harsh environment.
You can ask the thousands of roustabouts, roughnecks, and oil workers why they come to this frozen patch far above the Arctic Circle to make a living. But the answer is simple and one word: money.
We don't sit out here and suffer and be cold and just because we like it.
In the winter, it's dark 24 hours a day, brutal winds, and treacherous blizzards. Even though an entry-level job means as much as $28 an hour, these folks earn it.
There is no mountains around here. It's total tundra. When it blows, you can't see where you're going unless you know where you're at.
From the time you walk out the door, not being able to see your hand in front of your face.
Climate change means something different here. It means more of the Arctic is slowly being opened for exploration and extraction of oil and gas. While much of the world tries to pump the brakes on burning fossil fuels, analysts say as long as we're an oil-dependent world, people here can depend on jobs.
So you get an idea of what it's like up there. In the dead of winter, crews work along the North Slope, in part because the rock-solid permafrost provides a solid foundation. But permafrost is thawing in the Arctic. And as it does, it's opening up a Pandora's box full of possible trouble. Giant sinkholes are opening up, swallowing buildings, roads, bridges, and yes, pipeline. But there is a hidden danger: the amount of carbon dioxide and methane stored in that frozen tundra. There is a danger of pumping more and more harmful greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This as the world is struggling to find a way to reduce those harmful emissions.
Massive machines don't roll over paved roads above the Arctic Circle at the start of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline in Dead Horse, Alaska. Here, nature has provided firm, flat roads with a thick layer of permafrost, capable of withstanding millions of pounds of rolling rigs. But as global temperatures rise, scientists are getting more and more concerned about thawing permafrost.
Nobody were expected changes. That's why we call permafrost actually permanently frozen ground.
Vladimir Romanovsky is a geophysics professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, doing research in a state where permafrost layers can be anywhere from a meter to several hundred meters thick. As long as permafrost remains -8 degrees Celsius, it will remain rock solid, but the clock is ticking.
Within 30, 50 years, it will be maybe -3 instead of -8. And that will be a major problem because all engineering solutions were made or design or engineering structure were designed for much colder permafrost.
The damage from thawing permafrost is easy to see. It's not just homes and other structures at risk. Roads, bridges, and pipelines carrying oil and gas could also get swallowed by the earth as permafrost gives up ground.
Right now, we're about 35 meters underground. This tunnel is actually a throwback. It was built during the height of the Cold War, when the U.S. military wanted to know if they could burrow through frozen ground if they had to. Well, today it's a working lab of sorts, allowing a host of researchers to find out what's happening in this part of the world as the permafrost in the Arctic begins to thaw. That's a big one.
Yeah, it looks like a bison, either a leg or an arm bone.
Quentin Gehring is a civil engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which oversees and maintains the permafrost tunnel. In some ways, it's a mini natural history museum, collecting animal bones tens of thousands of years old.
Mammoth tusk sticking out here, and looks like a large joint, either a bison or a mammoth, and also another horn down here.
But decaying wood, grass, and thick ice wedges are capturing the attention of scientists, studying long-term effects of climate change. As permafrost thaws, it releases more carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, greenhouse gases blamed for global warming.
And we know now that in permafrost, estimates of how much organic material is in permafrost right now, it's about twice more than it is in the atmosphere, twice more.
So, as the solid turf melts, there is no stopping the greenhouse gases from pouring into the atmosphere, feeding a cycle of warming temperatures. Romanovsky says if left unchecked, the thick permafrost in the Arctic could be nothing but a soggy memory by the end of the century.
It is a complex and diverse location. Climate change is altering the landscape in the Arctic each year, thawing permafrost. Winter is ending earlier, summers are starting earlier. Volatile freakish storms are also leading to widespread erosion along coastal areas. And the reason this is all important, if it is happening there right now, it will happen in our latitude sometime in the near future.
It's amazing stuff. I want to go back to what you talked about earlier on the drilling and protecting of the environment. So a lot of people think these oil companies are these terrible companies and are destroying the earth. Did you get the sense that they were trying to the people you met with trying to protect the environment as well?
It's a good question because there's a large population you're never going to convince that they are doing the best they can as safely as possible. They point to BP, they point to the Exxon spill, but in Dead Horse, their guidelines are so rigid. Like if you and I would pump some gas in our car, take the nozzle out and spill just a drop, that's considered a spill in the Arctic. They have to call a crew in to clean that up. You can't throw a cigarette butt on the ground. You can't spit chewing tobacco on the ground.
It's cleaner than Washington, D.C., it sounds like.
Very much so, especially the metro areas. But it is, it's something that they take very seriously. They have an entire company up there, Alaska Clean Seas, that is funded by the oil industry, that is there with about 100 employees, millions of dollars of equipment, simply to react to oil spills.
Who oversees all this? I mean, who's in charge? Because I saw different flags in your story. I saw the EU flag in there as well. I mean, there's a lot of different people with different interests. Who's ultimately in charge of this?
It's a good question because it also runs over all kinds of land, some land owned by Native Alaskans. It is their land. It's all leased. Because those corporations, the native corporations are out there, they get money every year that comes over wherever the pipeline crosses. State of Alaska also has a great deal at stake in this. They're very active in there as well. And the companies police themselves as well.
A little self-policing.
Indeed.
We need you to write a book about this, Sean, by the way.
Man, we were up there so long and met so many great people we easily could.